There is a $1.5 trillion auto loan debt bubble in America right now. Most of it belongs to 22-year-olds financing rapidly depreciating liabilities at 14% APR. They sign an 84-month auto loan on a Dodge Hellcat, but the monthly insurance premiums match their rent. Therefore, they are now sleeping in the backseat. But there is a small, cynical group of people who realized cars are actually terrible investments, so they stopped buying them to drive and started buying them to exploit. This is the $140 billion used car market. This is every level of a car flipper's career and exactly what it costs to climb from flipping rusty Hondas in a driveway to brokering million-dollar exotic assets. Level 1. The Driveway Hustle. You're 19. You have $1,500 in your checking account, which means your total liquid net worth is exactly one 2004 Honda Civic with a salvage title. You found it on Facebook Marketplace. The seller swore it runs and drives, but the transmission slips violently in third gear. Therefore, you are now lying on cold concrete at 2 a.m. watching a 45-minute YouTube tutorial on how to bleed a clutch cylinder. You think you're an entrepreneur. You're not. You're providing free, unregulated sweat equity. You spend your entire weekend scrubbing a decade of human DNA out of the cloth seats. You buy a $20 Yotto socket set, 2 cans of cheap degreaser, and a can of rust-oleum to hide the cancer on the rear quarter panels. You list it back on Marketplace for $2,500. A teenager shows up with $2,100 in crumpled, sweaty bills. You take it. You just made a gross profit of $600, but you spent 30 hours detailing, fixing, and messaging lowballers who asked, "Is this available?" and never replied. Therefore, your actual ROI equates to $20 an hour. You have zero scalability, zero healthcare benefits, and massive legal liability if that Civic's engine explodes on the highway tomorrow. You're at the absolute bottom of the automotive food chain. You realize that exchanging your physical health for tiny profit margins is a terrible, highly taxable business model. If you want to touch actual wealth, you have to stop buying garbage from high school kids and start buying directly from the bank, and start bending the rules. And that means stepping into the gray market. Level 2. The Curbstoner. You're 23. You figured out that the real margin isn't in fixing cars. It's in flipping paper. You start title jumping. You buy a 2012 Nissan Altima from a desperate seller on Craigslist, but you never register it in your name to avoid paying the state sales tax. Therefore, you are casually committing a low-level felony. You park 3 cars on the grass of a vacant lot. You're a curbstoner. You buy cash cars with glowing check engine lights, clear the codes with a $15 OBD2 scanner, and sell them to people with terrible credit scores before the dashboard lights back up like a Christmas tree. Your profit margins double. You're pulling in $2,000 a week in untraceable cash, but you sell a rigged Ford Focus with a blown head gasket to a guy whose cousin is a local cop. Therefore, the city slaps you with a massive fine for operating an unlicensed dealership and evading tax liabilities. Your entire liquid net worth is wiped out in legal fees. You realize that playing in the shadows has a terrible risk-to-reward ratio. If you want to scale this operation without facing financial ruin or prison time, you need a dealer license and access to the wholesale market. You need the auction. Level 3. The auction lot. You're 27. You finally paid the state for a legitimate dealer license. This gives you the golden ticket, access to the Copart and Mannheim dealer-only auctions. You think you've hit the big leagues, but you are now swimming with corporate sharks who have millions in institutional capital. Therefore, you are forced to bid on the bottom of the barrel, high-mileage inventory. You win a 2017 BMW 3 Series with a minor front-end collision for $6,000. It looks like a steal on the low-resolution auction photos, but when it arrives on the transporter, you discover the hidden fees of the auction house and realize the unibody frame is twisted like a pretzel. Therefore, your projected ROI instantly turns into a $4,000 write-off. To survive the sheer volume of depreciating liabilities sitting on your lot, you lease a gravel space behind a strip mall and hire a cheap, undocumented local mechanic. You stop selling to cash buyers and start dabbling in third-party dealership financing. You realize the metal is no longer the product. The financing is the product. But selling $10,000 cars to people with 500 credit scores is exhausting. To build a true empire, you have to stop relying on outside banks and become the bank yourself. Level 4. The Buy Here, Pay Here Empire. You're 33. You paved the gravel lot and put up a blinding neon sign. You no longer care about the mechanical condition of the cars. You only care about the down payment. You target buyers whose financial histories have been destroyed by terrible life decisions. You sell them a heavily depreciated Mercedes C-Class, but you finance it entirely in-house at a predatory 24.99% APR. Therefore, you are mathematically making more money on the interest than the value of the vehicle itself. The buyer makes exactly 3 monthly payments and defaults, but you installed a hidden GPS kill switch under the dashboard. Therefore, your repo guy takes the car back in the middle of the night. You keep their entire down payment, and you put the exact same car back on the front line the very next morning. You're essentially running a highly unregulated, high-yield loan operation. Your dealership financing model is generating massive cash flow, and your assets look incredible on paper. But dealing with repossessions, angry customers kicking in your glass doors, and constant legal threats is burning you out. You realize you don't want to exploit poor people's money anymore. You want to exploit rich people's egos. Level 5. The Exotic Broker. You're 42. You sold the subprime lot. You now operate out of a climate-controlled, appointment-only boutique showroom. The floors are polished white epoxy. There are no price tags on the windshields. Your clients aren't asking about an auto loan or worrying about insurance premiums. They are billionaires, professional athletes, and hedge fund managers looking to park their cash in appreciating assets to dodge inflation. A client calls looking for a specific Ferrari F40. You track one down in a private collection in Switzerland, but the seller wants $2.5 million wired within 24 hours. Therefore, you leverage your elite banking connections to float the cash, handle the international import taxes, and quietly deliver the car to your client's private airplane hangar. You never touch a wrench. You barely touch the car. You just connect the extreme wealth to the rare metal. Your commission on that single phone call is $150,000. Look at the trajectory. From scrubbing biohazards out of a salvaged Civic to shifting millions in global wealth. The product didn't change. The financial ecosystem did. The 19-year-old kid thinks the car is an asset. The 42-year-old broker knows it's a rapidly depreciating liability. The average consumer finances negative equity at a radioactive 19% APR just to look wealthy. But the master flipper controls the transaction. Therefore, he actually is wealthy. If you want to understand how money actually moves, stop financing your ego and hit subscribe.